that allows this to flourish as a long-term career, especially at a time that we're really acutely aware of a pilot production shortage. That's how you fix a pilot production shortage, is you give the opportunities and you provide the visibility that those opportunities exist to the people that you support every day.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
Pilot, you made it. Woo! You made it. I know it's been a long week. You have been waiting for this next interview episode, part 2 of 2 to drop with Cory Glenn from American Airlines, Director of Pilot Recruitment. Man, if you listen to episode 1, you know that this is an in-depth interview and we cover so many different things. If you have not listened to episode 1, put it on pause, slide on back to episode 1 and listen to the first part of our conversation, because as I was having this conversation, we just flowed. We just flowed for an hour and 20 minutes, and I needed to find a natural breaking point, and it was so hard to find one. So, we kind of ended it right there. And this next part, this is where all the meat of the entire interview is. We just keep going deeper, and it's such a great conversation. And if you can't tell, I'm a big fan of Cory. He does so much good work. They need to make him vice president. They need to make that guy CEO. That's how much Cory is awesome and helps the pilot community at large. He's a man among men, that is for sure. He casts a big shadow. Just a fair warning, if you have forgotten, I was in a conference room, so it's kind of echoey, and there's stuff happening in the background. There's the wait staff is cleaning up the breakfast from the National Gay Pilots Association breakfast that was going on, and so it's just part of it. But when you have somebody like Cory Glenn say, yes, I'm happy to interview you, just make it happen. So while you're listening, write us a review. Tell us you love it. Tell us what we can fix. Do whatever you like. But do leave some kind of honest review. If you have a question that you want to ask me, or you have an idea that you'd like a podcast episode about, or a person you think I should interview, send me an email over at podcast@spitfireelite.com. That is so helpful when you guys reach out. I've gotten so much good feedback. So send that right over. Super appreciative to every single one, and I do respond to them. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find us on the old Book of Faces or the Insta or whatever. I don't do TikTok because I don't need the Chinese balloons floating around watching my TikTok. So Cory Glenn, Director of Pilot Recruiting. This is a great episode. And last but not least, let's have a quick word from our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't have this awesome podcast. Hey, Pilot, it's Nick. I want to tell you about a great friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. He's a financial planner, and he's completely focused on the professional pilot. He's the kind of guy you want to go to for real talk to help you figure out your financial future. With so many upgrades and so many transitions and so many things going on, you owe it to yourself to give him a call. He'll help you design and execute really smart financial planning strategies, whether it's retirement planning, investment management, military transition, tax planning. He's a great financial planning partner. Timothy P. Pope, CFP, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Give him a shout. All the information's in the show notes. You should definitely tell him I told you to call. Okay, next question. I was at Envoy. I got hired in 2017. And I saw people getting hired outside of the flow. And, COVID happened, life happened, all of a sudden the vacuum happens on the top. And now the people I talk to at the Wholly Owns, everybody wants to know, is it possible to get hired outside of the flow? So is it possible
to get hired outside of the flow?
Absolutely. So 6 out of the 51 yesterday are from our wholly owns.
Okay.
And we still sit about 10% of the pilots we hire above the flow come from our wholly owns.
Okay.
It is a tricky thing, though, because if you were to look at what most people, if you boil down what makes someone competitive or not competitive, what's the first thing you think of? Flight time, right? Experience.
Yep. Sure.
There are so many other things that we look at, but that's where it boils down. So it becomes a much more difficult argument to make to say that the most senior pilot on the seniority list should theoretically have the most time, right? And the person at the lower ends have less time. So if you boil it down to that simple process, it makes sense for the most senior pilots to be the ones that have that flow through. That said, there are so many things that make a pilot competitive. It's on those pilots to, one, put that foot forward to even apply.
Okay.
But two, make the case and convince all of us that, okay, this is why I should get that job instead of that person that's coming through the flow.
So what I take away from that is, first off, get moving and get your application in.
Absolutely.
Do you think that people should get their applications like professionally reviewed? Do you think that's worthwhile? Do you think just put it in, it's fine, we got so many, we'll just grab you and go? Like, what is your position on that?
So I will tell you that based off of just some back of napkin math that I did a few months back, about 6 months ago, someone asked me, what do you think a career at American Airlines today is worth?
Yeah.
So I took our current contract. We know that pattern bargaining, all of the airlines are going to be pretty close on parity. You can't look back anywhere in history outside of a 3 to 6 month window and see a time that one was substantially different than the other.
Right.
If it was, those airlines were in bankruptcy and about to close down.
Yeah.
Right. So the parity is going to be there. It's going to be temporary for a couple of months while we work things out. And if you pick and choose one thing over another, yes, you can find something that's significantly better here than there, but then there's something significantly better there than here. So it all kind of washes out. Then it comes down to spending the time on that. So doing that back napkin math, for someone who's 34 years old, so 31-year career at American Airlines, following the progression that someone that age would have in their seniority, making the best moves quickest, it's about a $14 million career.
Yeah.
Before whatever this next contract iteration is.
That is so much money.
That's a huge amount of money.
That is so much money.
It's worth 5 to 7 to 10 minutes a week to work on your application. And if that means going through it, not just updating your times, but updating your expiration dates on your passport or your medical, or fixing any spelling errors, gaps in history or employment. Not only that, but I promise, and I say this all the time, you do that 2 or 3 weeks in a row and you spend 5 to 7 minutes a week just combing through the entire application and just tightening the bolts on that, you're going to find things every time. Once you get to the 5th or 6th week, you might think it's pretty tight. Now take that 5 to 7 minutes to engage someone to help get you prepared for that opportunity. Call someone that's supposed to write you a letter or that you would like to get a letter of recommendation from, and poke them and encourage them and remind them and get to the top of the text stream to say, hey, here's some bullets, here's some things to write a letter for me for. And also having a very sharp review. If you're not 100% confident in how your application looks or your resume looks, it never hurts to have extra eyes look at that. And there are several opportunities to go out there to people who've seen what those resumes look like, what those applications look like, and are much more in tune with finding the holes and gaps that tend to pop up to prevent someone from getting a call. 98% of the most competitive applicants out there that don't get a call is because there is some little thing that's wrong with that application.
What kind of things?
Mostly the things that I mentioned. So putting a start and end date with an employer and letting us know and being able to paint a very good picture by looking at that application to say, okay, this is where they went from here to there to there, making logical moves in your career to not just chase a type rating or chase a jet, but hey, show me that your path is leading yourself to American Airlines. What things do you think we value? Making that chance to, we had someone that left a carrier in the right seat, flying bigger aircraft internationally, to take a captain upgrade at a regional because he didn't have the PIC time. That turbine PIC time carries a lot of weight because you've now had experience flying with captains and flying with first officers. As a first officer, you've flown with a lot of captains, but you haven't flown with a lot of first officers. And there's a difference in the way those things happen, and you don't get that in the schoolhouse. You get that from operational experience.
Man, listen, if you're listening to this, like, this is awesome liquid gold. Like, dude, so good. All right. I got to rewind my mind because we were talking about the application. I think that I get a lot of questions. I do look at a lot of resumes. I look at a lot of applications. Like, we were talking about getting called outside the flow, and you said something interesting to me, which was, show me that you want to be here, basically.
That's right.
And so I don't think I can show you just by updating my application.
That's correct.
So I need to build my relationships with American Airlines.
Absolutely.
Man, it's like I've been saying this thing in repeat forever. And so
it should tell you something that more than 10% of the pilots that we gave job offers here to NGPA come from our wholly owns.
Yeah. And because they're being the ones that say, I want this.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. That is so impactful. That's so important. I just encourage everybody. First off, you're supporting great organizations. So give them the tiny entry fee to come here. But like your team, what marching orders do you give them when they're sitting down for interviews, right? Like, walk me through what you're telling them.
That's a great question. I'll tell you, number one goes back to just taking care of people and doing the right thing and giving them a great experience. Again, having gone through interviews with several companies, also military interviews, the experience makes all the difference in the world of deciding where you want to land. And for us, if we want to encourage the best pilots to come here, it starts with providing a great experience. So my marching orders to my entire team is make sure there's no stone left unturned of taking care of someone that comes in. And the goal is for that person that walks out and does not get a job, still goes away saying, wow, I really felt cared for here. I really felt like I had a great opportunity, and it was on me that I didn't get the job, not on an unfair process or that someone is just not caring about what's happened.
Can you tell me some general examples of how people bone up an interview?
Sure.
I know.
Number one, know your space and be self-aware of what you're doing. You are coming in for a very professional job. We have a very small moment in time to get a good snapshot of how you carry yourself, both in front of passengers, in front of other employees, and we want to make sure that we can see that professionalism. So you don't necessarily have to wear a blue suit and red tie, but it is a business attired event. So number one is your appearance. You got to look the part.
What if I have crazy socks on?
Well, it depends on how short the pants are.
Okay. Yeah, fair.
If you can find that line of being yourself, your authentic self.
Authenticity is important.
Absolutely. That's all we look for. Is we're looking for who you are, not how well you can get ready for 1 hour.
Yeah.
And so being able to shine and be who you are and show us what you have to offer, not that you answer a question perfectly. I can tell you the questions that we ask have a lot of variance in the way that we can take it, because we want to know who you are and how you handle that, not that you've got a script to follow to respond to those questions. We're very aware of what those scripts are, and it's very easy for our interviewers to identify that. And as soon as that happens, you're going to get some curveballs that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to get through the process so that we can peel back the layers and see who you really are.
So are you talking about, like, people say canned answers?
Right.
That's kind of what you're going for?
Absolutely.
Give me an example.
Let's see, an example. That's going to be a little bit tough. But for example, if I were to ask a question tell me about a time that you dealt with conflict in the cockpit. Okay. That's probably a popular question.
Man, is it a popular question?
And when you get that question, you can say, all right, there was this time that I was flying with a captain, and the captain made a decision I didn't agree with, and he was all over me. And so this is what I did. I confronted him. I neutralized it, and we went on, and we were both happy. We probably have heard the same response a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But if you can tell me an example of where it's not always that it was resolved the way that everybody lived happily ever after. Sometimes a mistake was made, And after that, had a lot more time to think about it and was able to change my process or change the way that I operate because that didn't work. That's okay.
Yeah. So when I talk to people like about the conflict question or whatever, like one of my big things is like the idea of the question is to get to know who you are and how you're going to handle things if you have self-awareness and can articulate that. It's not, have you had a conflict? Hell yeah, you've had a conflict.
Right.
Yeah, probably more than you'd like. But like, how do you handle it? Do you handle it with grace? Are you professional? Like, you know, you're leaning on your foundational elements of CRM and threat and error management, but like, okay, cool. What did you learn from that? Because that tells who you are. How do you use that today? And how are you going to make American better being that person there?
That's exactly right.
So it gives you, because you grade them, right? You grade it, like an answer is graded.
It is.
Okay.
And that's the reason why we have 2 pilots. So 2 pilots, line pilots, do that interview.
2 pilots.
And the reason we have that is because we all have a little bit of a variance in opinion on what we look for and what we like. But by and large, it is very easy to identify, and especially in the airline industry, every airline has their do not pair list or do not fly with list that you put out there. And the preponderance of those individuals are identified by all the pilots that fly with them. So it's really easy to see those things that are not good characteristics. And there's a lot of agreement on what those characteristics are. So having 2 pilots there, while somebody may not like it, both of them can come to a concession and say, but they're doing the right thing to correct it. They get better. If they're not aware, just like you mentioned before, that self-awareness is a huge piece.
Oh, man.
That continuous learning and development and identifying opportunities to improve the way you handle situations is very important. Being very rigid and saying this is the way I do things, like it or not, is probably not conducive to good CRM, which is probably not going to lead to a job offer.
He's talking to you, military guys and girls. I'm telling you, I love you all. He's talking to you. I know, I see it every day. So many questions. This is so good. Have you ever had anybody like sit there and start cursing and stuff like that?
If you ask anyone that's gone through our process, we intentionally try to make you relax because, again, having gone through these processes at other places, no one wants to be uncomfortable. There's already a lot riding on the line.
It is so, I cannot tell you how stressful. I mean, trust me, man. I know you did it, but it's so stressful.
It is.
Ugh.
It is. And trying to take out demystify the process, but 2, take out those artificial things that add the pressure in those environments. Yes, we want to know how you operate under pressure, but our goal, there's enough pressure just inherent in the organics of going through a multi-million-dollar career interview that we don't have to add to increase that. But what we do want to do is be able to get to a point where you are on step and being able to present yourself and how do you handle these normal stressors and what will we see in a normal day. And so we do a really good job of trying to make you relax, make you more comfortable. Some folks take that a little too far.
Uh-huh.
And, this is probably the area where the military folks shine a little bit because they have experience of working with people in a hierarchical state where on some regard, they have a relationship with those folks that outrank them. That's a very casual, intimate relationship. And on another level, it is a very highly respectful and professional relationship. And military folks tend to be able to separate when it's appropriate to do what. It's a little bit harder when you're in an environment where you're not quite sure of the person you're sitting across from. There's no hierarchical rank there. But again, it is a professional career. So the expectation is that while you can have a conversation and be yourself, you also recognize and you have that self-awareness and that situational awareness that you're in a professional environment and that some things are better left unsaid or you spend a little time thinking through the way that you're going to word it, because dropping some words in the middle of a conversation shows that maybe you're not quite aware of the situation that you're in.
Yeah. So they probably see the door pretty soon after that, huh?
They do. Get an opportunity to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Do they get a call back? Like, do you get an opportunity to redeem yourself later?
Absolutely. So we do not have a policy in place that says that, it's one swing. You get multiple swings The timeline and the differences are based off of what we gather from that process. Sometimes it can be a really short footprint because you were just almost there, not quite ready. And some folks, it's a little bit longer. It could be a year or two because they were just so far off that we need to see a pattern shift and some experience showing that that is not a temporary shift, but a permanent shift.
Do you tell them that, or is just kind of internal?
Mostly internal. We've actually recently got to where we do provide feedback for some folks that aren't successful. It takes a lot of work through the legalese side of human resources of providing feedback. But in that regard, we provide what we can to those individuals that we think have what it takes to be successful and just need to reorganize it and put it in the correct order.
All right. So I think the takeaway is if you get a debrief, you got another shot pretty soon. So soon enough. That could be totally relative.
That's exactly right.
All right. I'm not going to push you anymore on that. I think that's good. So, beards. When are we going to be able to have beards?
That is well outside of my wheelhouse. Yeah, I will tell you that I know some of my peers at some of the other airlines, if that's not part of their process, they look for that on the day of the interview. For us, we are very cognizant of the difference of backgrounds of where folks are coming from. I mean, we hire people from all of the large airlines and all throughout the industry, throughout the world. So we even recently, as soon as about 3 months ago, hired a British Airways 777 captain with a beard. Obviously, because that's not a policy that we embrace once you're an American Airlines pilot, it had to go. But through the process, he was still a British Airways pilot, and it looked professional. And so we're not going to say, you have to adhere to whatever our standards are
at the interview,
but you do need to represent the standards of what you're coming from.
Okay. That's so interesting. Blew my mind right there. I would like to make a pitch. I'm making a pitch to every airline to revamp the beard policy because I think it's awesome.
So I can tell you the argument that's out there with the beards.
Sure, go ahead.
And it's such a slippery slope because beards can look very professional and very sharp. The uniforms are built to create uniformity, right? And to have a same look. And the more that, even with having uniforms, the way that they're worn varies so much that you can have somebody that is dressed and looks very sharp and someone that doesn't look sharp at all in the uniform. It's that professional look. And so the more opportunities you allow deviation from that uniform, the much wider the lanes of non-uniform folks become.
Yeah.
And so that's really the argument, is that, yes, there are some people that can pull off a really good looking beard. I don't know that I'm one of those people, but now that I have just because I have the right to do it doesn't mean I should do it. Some people don't have that self-awareness to go, you know what, I better not pull that off.
I'm not talking like ZZ Top beard, even though you're a Texas company. Like ZZ Top, maybe too long, but maybe just like Viking beard, like forked in the middle. I think that would be a good look. But that's just me.
Fu Manchus,
All of them. All right. This is so interesting. What question am I not asking you that you think I should be asking you?
Question are you not asking me?
See, it's good. You usually do the interviews. Now I'm doing the interview.
Right. I get a lot of questions about the actual process.
Okay.
About, why do we do assessments? Why don't we do simulator evaluations? And what's the purpose of doing a personality assessment? All of those things kind of come up a bit, and what are the values that they carry? I think a lot of people don't realize, I can tell you when I stepped in this role, I did not realize how much science was behind those assessments. A lot of work has gone into those, and I think another one of the carriers uses the same pilot skills test as we do.
Yep.
But those assessments are actually much more objective than the old way of putting you in a simulator for an airplane that you've never flown before, paired up with another candidate that has been flying that airplane for the last 3 years, and expect you to perform exactly the same. That's not very objective, and that doesn't really tell us a whole lot about your ability to adapt and learn and go through a training process. But those assessments they've spent a lot of time developing those, and the companies that develop those assessments have done an amazing job of extrapolating the critical components and skill sets that our trends to tell us how someone's going to do in training, how someone is going to be able to pick up and adapt and operate not only in a stressful environment, but when multiple tasks are going on at the same time. And for us, we actually took that a step beyond and had several thousand of our pilots take those assessments before we launched it, took their performance, their training records, their employment records, put that all together to see, okay, based off of what we think they're going to do, how do they really do? We use history.
Did you fire anybody because they did terrible?
We did not fire anybody. But I will tell you that between those few thousand pilots that we had on property that took those assessments and almost 10,000 applicants that we've had in the last 15 months that have taken that assessment, I can count on one hand the number of folks that have gone through the training program that have deviated from what those results predicted for us. It is amazingly accurate. Still blown away about how well that predicts for us. And that is a huge driving factor of allowing us to be able to be confident in who we bring in to hire.
And that's the skills part. Isn't there a personality part too?
It's sort of a personality. It's more of a cultural fit part.
Okay.
And one of the, like I mentioned before, the unique thing of being able to drive the culture we want is that we fine tune the way that is to allow us to see the other part, right? The two components are how do you fly an airplane and how do you take care of people? And that's really the how do you take care of people part. And how are you going to be able to operate in an environment with pilots that you've never flown with before? I'm going to steal my VP of Flight's thunder of something he likes to share, but I'm going to share it anyway.
Go for it.
Is that he was flying a trip several years ago, narrow body, had a competitor pilot in the jump seat, and they were going from Texas to Florida. When they landed, it was a clear weather, normal day. They landed in Florida, got to the gate on time, and as the jump seater was leaving, he's like, wow, you guys buddy bidders, could tell the parent, you guys fly together all the time. In fact, that was day one, leg one of the first trip they'd ever flown together. And those standards and that ability to adapt and connect, that is not only SOP driven, that is culturally driven. And so that's a huge component that we look for.
There is nothing better than getting in an aircraft and sitting down with somebody and just clicking with them.
Absolutely.
And you just like, I can't tell you how many, like, seriously, lifelong friends I have because we click so well. And it's so fun. That Absolutely. Is like, those are the things I love about this job is like that opportunity. You know, like, shoot, I'm going to call you. Yeah, we're going to go hang out. Like, how's the flight going? Hell, you know, like, let's get to fly again. That is, and then like when I was at FO, like, I don't want to make captain because I'm never going to see him again.
Right, right.
It's so disappointing. I'm like, oh, the seniority's great, but oh, goodness. Yeah. So are you still doing the phone screen, like the Zoom screen?
We are. So those are folks that work in our flight department. They're not HR folks. So it's much more of a administrative interview, if you will, for someone that's not a pilot.
Okay.
And it's just, again, that process allows more of our organization to be involved in the pilot selection process because, as you know, as an airline pilot, you deal with one other pilot normally on a regular trip, but you deal with several flight attendants, you deal with several gate agents, you deal with the folks, the support folks that work in the flight offices, and your ability to interact with those is really important and a critical part of making the operational successful.
It is. And I'll tell you what, if you're standing in line and you're waiting to get your lunch and you're standing next to a maintainer or something like that, buy them lunch and chat with them.
Absolutely.
God,
absolutely.
You learn so much. And first, also, like, I get on a little soapbox here. Like, people often think pilots are, you know, out from the outside looking in, they have an opinion of pilots. And a lot of times they're not awesome. And that's as far as I'm going to go talking about that. But once you reach out and you connect and you're human with them, and they like, and you show them some love and gratitude, you change all of it.
Absolutely.
You can have a huge effect. Yeah. I need to do a whole solo episode all about that. Gosh. All right. So how long have you been in this role?
Just over 3 years. So I stepped into the role and there's a little bit of a gap in there. So January of 2020. My timing was impeccable because we know what happened in March of 2020, right?
I know. I was trying to get hired over here.
So not only was I charged with hiring pilots, but I was charged with shutting the process down and bolting things up and making sure that we were trimmed out for when we had to get back to hiring. Mm-hmm. And we did that really well on record pace. There was a period of about 7 or 8 months that I did 2 things I said I would never do. I upgraded on a narrow body aircraft and I commuted 2 legs to New York.
2 legs.
And I don't regret a day of it. It was some amazing flying. I got to fly with some fantastic pilots up there and really enjoyed it. But it also gave me some perspective, or reminded me of some perspective of some of the things that I had been away from for a while, of the challenges of a commuter, of the challenges of living in base or not in base, of the challenges of junior pilots I flew with. And some folks may be aware, but one of the things that we did to minimize the amount of pilots we furloughed is we had a program called Zero Timelines, where basically the pilots didn't have awarded schedule, but they maintained their currency and they're on their own. They went in and picked up and used open time to get what they could. And that's one of the areas where I really saw the care and culture at American, because there were several pilots out there that just took care of those pilots and said, you know what? I don't need to fly 90 hours this month. I'll fly 60 hours so I can help another pilot fly 30 hours that had 0 hours, taking care of each other. And I flew with a lot of those pilots that were on those zero timelines that were just, they didn't want to go anywhere because they felt taken care of by the pilot group. They felt taken care of by the company for even having that opportunity. And like you said, you make some immediate opportunities to click on the flight deck. You immediately want to buy them a beer and dinner when you land. So
yeah,
it's just it was humbling. It was a great opportunity. And then I came back in May of 2021 to get things stood up.
That's so interesting. When shutting down the process and starting it back up, did you just kind of send out an email like, hey, everybody, guess what? The faucet's back open. Like, I need all my interviewers, interview team assemble. Like, what was that like?
It was really crazy because that notice came to me at the same time it went to the pilot group. Hey, we're going to hire pilots.
Oh, they didn't tell you ahead of time?
No, I got that same notice of, all right, we're ready to hire. We're going to hire pilots. And then a couple days later, I got the call and go, all right.
You're going to hire pilots.
How are we going to do this? So I got brought back in the middle of a block of reserve, flew back to Dallas and started coming up with a plan. Fortunately, just from other experience that I had with the military and flying at the regional, I already had in mind what it would look like if I went back in the role and started things back up. And so we started executing the plan. Several of my team members had retired and took that opportunity. They were close to retirement anyway. A couple of folks were brought back in, and we had already talked about what that plan would look like. And of course, we needed to grow the team back. And so we hired several new people on the team. And our interviewers hadn't done interviews in almost 2 years. So we had to figure out a way to get there. And the way we did that is we did it the same way you do when you haven't flown an airplane for a while. We put them through a recurrent process, got them back on speed, and then launched the process.
Yeah, gosh. So you've been doing this 3 years, and you're going to do it for some certain amount of time. And at some point, you're not going to be doing this anymore. When it's said and done, and you hang up your hat from the recruiter, from the recruiting and hiring, what is your legacy?
My legacy is one, to have been the best leader I could be for my team. And as that team grows as I hire new pilots, to give the opportunity and making sure that preserving the sanctity of our career, of this industry, and also making sure that there's a marked change. And this is where the diversity piece comes back in, is that the representation of our pilot group represents some semblance of the customers that we take care of, because that allows this to flourish as a long-term career and replenish the career, especially at a time that we're really acutely aware of a pilot shortage or a pilot production shortage. That's how you fix a pilot production shortage, is you give the opportunities and you provide the visibility that those opportunities exist to the people that you support every day. And when you or I we're probably about the same age, right? And I can remember the biggest number one thing that reinforced that being a pilot was cool was going to see Top Gun.
Yeah.
And so for me, that coolness of a pilot, our passengers get to see that. I remember going every time I flew as a child, as a young adult, seeing a pilot, like, man, that's so cool. I want to be that person. And so allowing those folks to see people that look like them are what draw them to the industry. And then the other side of that is making sure that we have a pipeline of training that provides the training to the standard that we look for. So when they get here, they're set up for success.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to be able to sit in the back as a retiree and take a nap and not be concerned about what's happening up front.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So to be an American pilot, you need to show up and be authentic, understand the culture of the organization.
That's right.
And be empathetic to the people to create that customer service experience.
That's right.
It's good.
Yeah.
Like
and there's a kind of takes me back to one of your earlier questions, but there is a level of humility that comes with this job because of what you mentioned before, the perception out there from folks that aren't pilots and how they view pilots. You have to be aware and you have to have some sense of humility. And that even amongst ourselves, we have to exhibit that level of humility and recognizing that while you may have done a lot of things to become competitive, to become a professional, it's a continuation process. It never ends. And being aware and recognize that you can learn from others, and that because someone comes with a different skill set than you doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different. And that difference allows both of you to multiply those experiences together and come up and resolve some of the crazy things we see in the airplanes.
So we've been talking for like over an hour, and nothing we talked about had to do with how good a pilot somebody is, because by the time they get here, they have been well trained. They are like, they will, and like the steps put in place give an understanding that they will likely be successful in training.
That's right.
And so that's secondary.
Absolutely is. It's
your humanity that makes the difference.
That's exactly right.
I wish I could just like tell everybody that all the time, because I have like, there's so much, the idea that you're a pilot, like I'm proud as can be that I get to be a pilot, but I don't I try not to be over how do you know somebody's a pilot? Hey, because they're going to tell you.
Right.
And that's it. And so the more you show that, the more you're able to be that human, that person that gives, that person that is able to communicate effectively and show that and be a little vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Because if you can't, what's going to happen when it's really bad weather and the flight is delayed and people are upset and the gate agent is crying at the desk because it's so hard and maintenance is calling and crew scheduling wants to know what's going on and dispatch is confused and you don't have the right alternate and you don't have enough fuel and all the things are happening. And
don't forget the washing machine's broke at home.
Yes. Yeah. And your kid broke his arm.
Right.
So that's exactly right. And so to be able to manage that and be successful and still treat people like a human instead of being stressed out and a maniac. I'm mostly talking to myself, I guess. That's so important. So show that. Gosh.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is I can tell you probably the most disappointing kind of person that I see come in the door is someone that has the potential and the capability and are overly presumptuous of where they stand among their peers, thinking that this is not a given. This is an opportunity to work well with others.
Yeah.
And so the moment you become presumptuous of you being the smartest person in the room or the best hands in the room is the moment that you stop taking input from those people and the opportunity to collaborate and work together and provide that environment not only for each other, but for other crews to see and other people to see and other people to engage and be willing to bring some pieces that you may not even be aware of in your situation forward.
Yeah. I can imagine if I was in flight school right now, if I was, whether I'm at Embry-Riddle or any kind of school, even younger, I'm taking some basic lessons and I'm 16 or 17 or 18 years old. It just seems like a lifetime away, doesn't it?
It really does. I engage at all those levels, at the middle school level, the high school level, at the collegiate level, at the flight training level, at the flight instruction level, at the regional level. And the thing that I probably would want to share to anybody at any phase is the most important aspect of being a successful pilot is the resiliency that comes with our ability to compartmentalize, to put all of those things in their own basket, prioritize them, and handle them in the order that they need to be handled in, and not getting fixated on the times things don't exactly work the way that they should. And there are, I will say, especially for someone who's in the training process, how daunting is a check ride failure, right? You're just learning and you have a check ride failure. Your ability to adapt and recover from that and to say, okay, I messed that up. One, take ownership, because there are things I could have done to prevent it. But two, now I'm going to use those things that I could have done to prevent it from happening again. And three, I'm going to focus on what lies ahead and being successful there, rather than dwelling on the fact that I wasn't successful here or as successful as I expected to be. That is so important. I will tell you that there are people that I've seen that have had stumbles in their career and recovered magnificently from that. And their ability to bring forward and take those lessons and share them with others impresses me more than someone that never had a stumble in their life.
Yeah, and that's just it. And so to the pilot listening, especially those with multiple failures, like, you are good enough. Be encouraged and be moving forward, and don't discount your value or the fact that, this career is for you. We want you to succeed. And so put the odds in your favor,
right? And
be better and show that you are that person. That's so good. Cory, thank you for spending so much time. I could talk to you all day. You've been so generous. I know I was up till 1 a.m. getting ready for this conversation because I know how busy you are. And I just want to tell you that on behalf of Bill and Tron, we appreciate what you do. Pilot community, all the people that speak with us. This is unbelievably valuable. And so, gosh, man, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely, Nick. It's been my pleasure. And, we're going to continue to talk and visit. And coming back to your legacy question, is all of those struggles it was as a regional pilot, and at the time where you had to wear the blue suit and the red tie and hold the water bottle in the right hand and do all these things that really don't say anything and seemed ridiculous that we stepped through. The other thing that I saw was folks that were in the position that I happen to be blessed to be in today.
Yeah.
Were never accessible. You can never get that time with those folks. And so, for me, being at events like NGPA, coming up in 2 weeks, Women in Aviation, OBAT, RTAC, our own events that we run, just being there visible to allow those folks that are in the process or considering the process to hear exactly what they needed to hear was what I felt like I missed when I was coming through that process. And you can handle that one of two ways. You can embrace the air quotes tradition, or you can break away from the tradition and create a new heritage and a new tradition and make things a lot better and more comfortable in the process. So.
Yeah. Every time I see you in these conventions, it just, you're walking around, you're putting yourself in positions in front of people, introducing yourself, and just having the conversation, whether they know you're the director or not. You're like, hey, director of flight, you are out there and you're just encouraging and positive. And that, I think, drives, it just does a massive effect, A, for your team, and B, for the people that want to be an American Airlines pilot. And so it's awesome. And so keep doing that.
Thanks.
All right, man. Thank you for talking to us.
Absolutely.
Hey, before I let you go, I need to mention one thing, because a lot of people are asking me, can you do anything? Can you help me with this? And the answer is yes. At Spitfire Elite, we will make more millionaires this year than Major League Baseball will make in the next 5 years. Our company actually does this. It's called Spitfire Elite Interview Consulting. And you can find us over at SpitfireElite.com. Our clients, they call us the easy button for interview prep, because everything you need to crush your interview is there in one spot. Whether it's application review or interview prep, all of it is covered. We've helped thousands of clients who are now flying at their dream jobs because our coaches gave them the one-on-one feedback that they needed to succeed on the biggest day of their life. The best part of Spitfire is our community. All Spitfire clients will get access to our private chats where they can work with each other and they can work with our coaches and get the latest information on all the airlines. If you'd like to make sure that you are 100% ready to go on your big day, there is only one choice. Everything you need is in one place, and I think it's pretty affordable. You'll have to take a look for yourself. Just go over to SpitfireElite.com and check us out. Use the coupon code podcast and it'll save you 10%. And by the way, I will see you on the next episode. The statements made on this show are my own opinions and do not reflect, nor are they under any direction from my employer.